Have you ever felt that silence that seems heavier than lead? That absence of a reply that turns your phone into an object of anxiety? That sense of invisibility when he simply disappears? As if something in you weren't enough to deserve, even a single word in response. His silence isn't about you. It never was. When he ignores you, when messages go unanswered and days pass, as if you were just a fleeting thought in his life, there is a universe of fear hidden behind that attitude. A fear seldom spoken of, seldom admitted, but existing with the same intensity as your desire to be seen. Like Diana, who once said, "I don't do things for the response, I do them for the results." You too deserve to understand what really happens when your partner chooses silence as a shield. Have you noticed how his absence often coincides with the moments when you shine the brightest, when your light beams the strongest? It's no coincidence. It's precisely when you begin to blossom that his fear intensifies. His fear isn't about you being wrong. It's about you being right. The spaces between his words hide deep vulnerabilities, as if you're standing before a frozen lake, seeing only the surface while turbulent currents flow in its depths. It is there in those hidden waters that the true reason for his distance resides. When he ignores you, when he pulls away without explanation, when he erects an invisible barrier between you, it's not because he doesn't feel. It's because he feels too much, and that terrifies him. His silences are like locked doors to rooms he never dared enter, rooms where his deepest insecurities live, his most primal fears, his doubts about being enough. Diana, in her wisdom, understood this dynamic in her relationships. She, who lived under the most intense spotlight in the world, knew how to recognize when someone else's silence was merely a reflection of internal battles invisible to the outside eye. You don't need to unravel every mystery of his silence to carry on with dignity. You don't need to decipher every unspoken word to determine your worth. His indifference does not diminish your light. In fact, the glow you radiate when you decide to move forward, when you decide you deserve more than crumbs of attention, is what often sets off his internal alarms. Because there's a fascinating paradox in relationships. The more you value yourself, the more he fears losing you. And the more he fears losing you, the more he resorts to emotional defense mechanisms that may include distancing as a preemptive shield against pain. His silence conceals an ancient fear. The fear of not being enough for someone he admires. The fear of being abandoned when you finally realize you can have more, that you deserve more. The fear that your personal growth will highlight his stagnation. Do you see the pattern? When he steps away, it's not because you don't matter, it's because you matter too much. Defense mechanisms are fascinating in their complexity. Like windows slamming shut during a storm, his emotional withdrawal is a desperate attempt to protect a fragile ego from the gusts of wind that your authenticity and strength represent. Diana knew this when she said, "People think I'm confident because I hold my head high and always smile, but I'm just a woman with a broken heart, trying to move on." She knew that behind apparent indifference are broken hearts trying to shield themselves from further pain. When he ignores you, he reactivates old patterns he learned long before you entered his life. Patterns that may date back to his childhood, when he learned that emotional withdrawal was safer than risking vulnerability in full love. His silence has deep roots in primary attachment bonds that shaped his view of intimacy and connection. That mother who may have been emotionally distant, that father who may have taught him that men don't show weakness. Those first heartbreaks that left invisible scars on his heart. You are not responsible for healing those wounds. You are not his therapist. You are a woman who deserves a love that doesn't require constant decoding, a love that communicates clearly even in difficult times. The emotional independence you cultivate. When you decide you'll no longer depend on his crumbs of attention is precisely what scares him most. Because when you become emotionally autonomous, when your happiness no longer relies on his approval or presence, you take away the only power he believed he had, the power to control your emotional stability through his presence or absence. Like water slipping through your fingers, the more he tries to hold on to you through control, the more you slip away through the cracks of his strategy. There is a profound beauty in recognizing these patterns, in seeing clearly the silent dance that happens when two people spin around their own insecurities, using the other as a mirror for their limitations. You know, deep in your soul, that you deserve a love that speaks, a love that communicates, that shares, that opens up even when it's hard, a love that doesn't use silence as a weapon or shield. And as you absorb these words, as you reflect on the silences in your relationship, know that you are not alone on this journey. Thousands of women just like you are right now, questioning the same patterns, seeking the same answers. If these reflections touched your heart, if you saw yourself in the depths of these words, consider joining our community, a place where we explore together the labyrinths of love and self-discovery. Subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so we can continue this intimate conversation, this journey of self-awareness that has only just begun. Because together, we are stronger. Together, we unravel the mysteries that imprison us in relationships that do not nourish us fully. And together, we learn to set healthy boundaries that clearly communicate, I deserve more than silence. I deserve words, presence, and honesty. His silence taught you a lot about yourself, about your resilience, your capacity to move forward even when the path seems uncertain, about your inner strength that remains intact even when external circumstances try to diminish it. When he ignores your messages, when he pulls away without explanation, when he creates a void where there should be communication, he is inadvertently giving you a gift. The opportunity to discover your own strength, to learn that your happiness cannot depend on external validation. The attachment bonds we form over a lifetime are like invisible threads connecting us to one another. Some threads are strong and flexible, allowing for movement and growth. Others are like chains binding us to toxic patterns, limiting our capacity to expand. His silence may be the moment you decide which threads deserve to stay and which need to be gently untangled so you can soar higher. Diana, in her journey of self-discovery, had to face institutional silences much more powerful than those in any personal relationship. She had to find her voice in a system that preferred her silence. And she did. Not perfectly, not without stumbles, but with an authenticity that resonated with millions around the world. You will find your voice too. And when that happens, his silence will no longer define you. There is a silent metamorphosis happening inside you as you face his absence. Like a butterfly transforming inside its cocoon, invisible to the outside world, you are reconfiguring, rediscovering parts of yourself that may have been forgotten in the process of loving someone who doesn't know how to love fully. The defense mechanisms he uses, distancing, indifference, silence, are just reflections of his own inability to handle the intensity of what he feels. It's as if he looks at the sun and, unable to bear its brightness, closes his eyes. You are that sun, radiant, vital, essential. And when he shuts his eyes to your light, it's not because it doesn't exist, but because he hasn't yet learned to absorb it without feeling diminished by its radiance. 7. Hidden fears behind his silence. 1. Fear of inadequacy. When he sees you grow, evolve, shine, the primal fear arises that he won't be enough to keep up with your journey. Silence becomes his shield against the possibility that you might confirm what he secretly fears, that you deserve someone better. 2. Fear of vulnerability. Opening up completely means exposing parts of himself that he may not even have the courage to face. Silence is the fortress that protects his heart from the devastating possibilities of total rejection. 3. Fear of commitment. True emotional closeness demands constant presence, not just physically, but emotionally. When he feels that demand rising, the panic of not being able to match it can drive him to retreat into the safety of distance. 4. Fear of repeating painful patterns. Past experiences cast long shadows over the present. His silence can be a desperate attempt to avoid reenacting old wounds imprinted on his emotional memory. 5. Fear of disappointing. Paradoxically, the more he cares about you, the greater his fear of failing to meet your expectations. Silence becomes a way to postpone the moment he believes he will inevitably let you down. 6. Fear of losing identity. Deep relationships require transformation. When he feels that loving you fully means letting go of parts of himself, silence emerges as a pause in his personal reinvention process. 7. Fear of your power. over him. Admitting the intensity of his feelings for you means acknowledging a vulnerability many men were taught to fear. Silence is his final attempt to maintain a semblance of control over emotions that threaten to overwhelm him. Do you see how each of these fears has no direct bearing on your actions or value? How each is a mirror of the internal battles he fights with himself? Diana, with her keen sensitivity, understood this dynamic. She knew that often, others' silence was nothing more than the echo of their own insecurities. And through painful experiences, she learned not to let others' silence define her worth or limit her journey. When you choose no longer to live, in the anguished wait for crumbs of attention, when you decide your peace of mind is worth more than constant uncertainty, you are setting healthy boundaries. Boundaries that say, I respect myself too much to accept less than I deserve. This is self-awareness in its most powerful form, the ability to recognize your own worth regardless of external validation. His silence is not your fate. It's just one chapter in your story, a chapter that can teach you more about your own strength than any of his words ever could. Like water finding its way even through the hardest rock, your essence will find ways to express and flourish, with or without him in your life. There is a serenity that arises when you stop trying to decode his silences and begin listening to your own inner voice. That voice that always knew what you deserve, but may have been drowned out by the noise of expectation, hope, and the desire to be chosen. You don't need to be chosen. You are the choice. Diana taught us that even in her loneliest moments, even when the world seemed to turn its back on her, there was an inner strength no one could diminish. She turned her pain into purpose, her isolation into connection with causes greater than herself. You too can turn his silence into fuel for your own evolution. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but because you deserve a full life, vibrant, authentic, rooted in honest communication. The emotional defense mechanisms he wields through silence are just reflections of his own limitations, not indicators of your worth. Like a mirror that doesn't show your image, but his insecurities. When you truly understand this, a profound liberation occurs. You stop personalizing his behavior. You stop believing there's something in you that needs changing, improving, or shrinking to be worthy of basic communication. This is emotional independence at its purest, the ability to separate others' actions from your intrinsic value. Sometimes his silence is the universe creating space for you to hear your own voice more clearly. The voice that always knew what you need, what you deserve, what is negotiable, and what is not. Healthy attachment bonds are built on presence, not absence, on words, not silences, on honesty, even when it's hard. If your relationship is more absence than presence, more silence than conversation, more uncertainty than security, perhaps it's time to question not what you can do to change it, but whether this is truly the kind of connection that nourishes your soul. Diana, with all her vulnerability and strength, showed us that it's possible to start over, that we can redefine who we are and what we accept in our lives, even when the world expects us to settle for less. You too can redefine your standards. You can decide that the love you deserve is the kind that speaks, that shows up even in difficult moments, especially in difficult moments. The self-esteem you cultivate when you choose not to live off crumbs of attention is like a garden that blooms after the harshest winter. It's a silent but powerful declaration that you know what you deserve. And what you deserve is someone who understands that silence used as a weapon or shield is a form of subtle emotional violence. Someone who sees that honest communication is the foundation of any healthy relationship. When he ignores you, disappears without explanation, leaves a void where dialogue should be, he reveals more about his own limitations than about your worth. And you, in your growing wisdom, can choose no longer to wait in the limbo of uncertainty. You can choose to move forward, carrying with you the valuable lessons this chapter taught you, but leaving behind the pain of not being fully seen. Because you deserve to be seen, to be heard, to be present in the life of someone who understands what a privilege it is to hold your heart, your mind, your essence so close. Diana realized at the end of her journey that her worth did not depend on the validation of an institution that so often silenced her. She found her voice, her purpose, her inner strength. You will find yours too. And when that happens, his silence will be nothing more than a footnote in a much bigger story. The story of how you learn to love yourself fully, to value yourself completely, to choose yourself consistently. Self-awareness is an endless journey. Each relationship, each interaction, each moment of joy or pain offers a mirror in which we can see ourselves more clearly. His silence gave you that mirror. It revealed parts of yourself you might not have known. Your resilience, your capacity to remain dignified even when treated with less dignity than you deserve, your strength to keep going even when the path seems uncertain. The boundaries you set now, the standards you establish for what you accept in your life, aren't just about this relationship. They're powerful declarations of how you see yourself, of what you know you deserve, of the kind of love you're willing to welcome into your life. Diana, on her journey of self-discovery and transformation, taught us that we are more than the limitations others project onto us. We are multi-dimensional beings, capable of loving deeply, but also of setting clear boundaries when that love isn't reciprocated in the way we deserve. When he ignores you, when he creates distance where there should be closeness, he is inadvertently giving you the gift of clarity. The clarity to see that perhaps what you feel for him isn't fully reciprocated, or that the way he expresses love isn't compatible with what you need to feel safe and valued. This clarity, though painful in the moment, is a beacon that illuminates the path to healthier, more nourishing relationships in the future. His emotional defense mechanisms, avoidance, denial, repression, are mirrors of his own interrupted emotional development. Like a child closing his eyes to feel invisible, he may believe that by ignoring intense feelings, they will simply disappear. But feelings don't vanish when ignored. They find other ways to express themselves, often more destructive for everyone involved. The emotional maturity you display by recognizing these patterns, by refusing to personalize his behavior, by maintaining your dignity when it would be easier to shrink yourself to fit into the limited space he offers, is admirable. It is this maturity that will eventually attract to your life people capable of communicating honestly, of facing emotional discomfort without fleeing, of staying present even when it would be easier to disappear. Because true love doesn't vanish when things get tough. It endures, finds words even when they're hard to speak, seeks understanding even when it would be easier to assume. Diana, even in her loneliest moments, found ways to transform her pain into purpose. She used her platform, her voice, her presence to shine a light on causes that mattered, to connect with people who also felt invisible or silenced. You too can transform this experience into something larger than yourself. You can use what you've learned about your own boundaries, about your worth, about the love you deserve, to build future relationships that are truly nourishing and mutually enriching. And maybe, somewhere along this path, you will become a beacon for other women in the place where you once stood, waiting in the limbo of uncertainty, trying to decode silences, shrinking yourself to fit into spaces never designed to contain all your magnificence. Because you are magnificent in your entirety, not just in the parts that are easy to love, but also in the parts that are complex, challenging, deeply human. His silence cannot diminish that truth. When he ignores you, when he steps away without explanation, when he uses silence as a weapon or shield, he is revealing his own limits, not yours. And you, my dear, are infinitely more than someone else's limitations. You are a universe of possibilities, of light, of love waiting to be, discovered by someone brave enough to stay present even when it's challenging, especially when it's challenging. Until then, keep shining, keep evolving, keep setting clear boundaries about what you will accept in your life. Because his silence is not your destiny. It's only a temporary detour in a much larger journey, the journey of discovering at last the true extent of your worth, your strength, your capacity to love and be loved in the way you truly deserve. Diana showed us that it's possible to rise from the ashes of disappointment, that we can rewrite our story on our own terms, that it's possible to find our voice even after prolonged periods of forced silence. You will rise too, stronger, wiser, more connected to your own truth. And when that rebirth happens, you will look back at the silences that once caused so much pain and recognize in them the catalysts of your own transformation. Not because they were fair, not because they were deserved, but because you chose to turn even pain into fuel for your growth. This is your true strength, and no one, not even him, with his silences and distance, can diminish it.